When there are breaks in this, notions based on psychological disposition can still dominate. So we're talking about enlightenment practice here, about moving more and more frequently to what we could call the still center, to Kaivalya. This is when awareness rests in itself. And it's not continuous. There's the romantic notion of liberation as a once and for all event, but it's not. It's something that has to be consciously returned to. Otherwise, we're entering into the cognitive reality, where we behave in accordance with our particular psychology. But Sutra 27 tells us it's notions based on our psychological disposition which can still dominate. And this is an interesting one, especially when it comes to understanding the wisdom texts. Texts like Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. I describe this translation that I've done as a fresh translation. And what this means is I'm taking my point of reference for this translation and commentary, the immediate experiencing as described from here. I'm not taking my point of reference a particular cultural understanding or a particular commentary or particular conventions or romantic notions of spiritual practice or romantic notions about yoga. The whole point of this text is to direct us to our immediate existential situation, the reality of right here and right now, which is why I feel the need to do this, because this understanding doesn't seem to be particularly common. So it's a small point perhaps, even if you've entered into this other dimension and experienced insight. How do you express it? The important factor really is to what extent do your moods latch onto it? To what extent does the ego usurp it? This is what we have to watch out for. There has to be a clear demarcation between insight and our psychological disposition, between insight and our moods. And Sutra 28 tells us, or reminds us, that these can be bypassed, as explained in relation to the afflictions. It can be a bit of a minefield, and we have to navigate through this minefield of our moods. It was explained in relation to the afflictions, which were covered early on in Book 2. And Sutra 10 tells us that the afflictions can be bypassed and their momentum undermined on the subtle level of yoga practice, which is to do with bringing the attention back to itself. We don't try to understand the mood in their own terms, because we get sucked into them. We have to develop dispassion in relation to our moods. And this dispassion can only come when there is this meditative focus which bypasses the vortices of the mind-heart. Sutra 15 of Book 2 told us that the astute individual does not look for comfort in the struggles inherent in physical existence, but faces up to the uncomfortable challenge of personal transformation. And this is essentially the first limb of yoga. we don't indulge our moods. So we have to be very clear about these two dimensions. The first dimension being that of everyday life, of cognitive reality, of our moods, and the second is the dimension of spiritual insight or awareness, samadhi. We have to be very clear about that and not confuse the two. We cannot feed our spiritual insight into our cognitive understanding. What we can do, though, is allow the strong tendencies of our psychological disposition to become less. They lose their grip the more our centre of gravity moves towards Kaivalya. And when this discrimination between awareness and the mind, yogic vision and consensus reality is fully realized, and there is no trace of self-indulgence, regardless of circumstances, then this is the Dharma cloud of samadhi. And I'll talk about this sutra in the next video.